Part 1. The starship Odyssey hung in the quiet dark near Viridia Prime, a glittering ring of metal and light that circled a pale blue gas giant. Inside the ship, Daniel Carter adjusted his collar for the third time in 10 minutes. He wasn't nervous, he told himself that over and over, but his palms were damp and his stomach felt like it had swallowed a hummingbird. This was humanity's first real step onto the galactic stage, and he was the one holding the script. Outside the viewport, alien ships drifted in slow, graceful arcs. Some were sleek and silver like knives, others bloated and organic, pulsing with soft bioluminescence. The Galactic Concord had existed for thousands of years, built by species that had long ago stopped counting their wars and started counting their treaties. Humans had only cracked the secrets of faster-than-light travel 83 years ago. To the Concord, Earth was a toddler with a loaded gun, curious, loud, and possibly dangerous. But Daniel wasn't here to fight. He was here to talk, to listen, to prove that humanity belonged. Behind him, Lisa Morgan stood near the bulkhead, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the main screen. She wore a standard-issue Navy uniform, no medals, no rank pins, just a plain black sidearm holstered low on her hip. She hadn't said much since they dropped out of warp, but Daniel knew her well enough to read the silence. She was watching. "Always watching, you ready?" he asked, not turning around. "Been ready since we left Mars orbit," she replied. Her voice was calm, flat, like stone dropped into still water. Daniel nodded. He took a breath, smoothed his jacket one last time, and tapped his comm. "Bridge signal Viridia Control. Tell them Ambassador Carter and party are prepared for docking." A soft chime answered him. "Signal sent, sir. They're opening Bay 7. The Odyssey eased forward, guided by invisible tractor beams. Through the viewport, the station grew larger. Vast corridors lined with glowing panels, docking arms unfolding like the petals of some mechanical flower. Ships of every shape and size clung to its surface. Daniel saw beings moving through transparent walkways, tall, feathered avians with long necks, squat armored reptiles with eyes like molten gold, gelatinous blobs floating in pressurized suits. None of them looked at the human ship. Not yet. When the airlock hissed open, Daniel stepped out first. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet like burnt sugar. A delegation waited, 3 figures in flowing robes of deep violet. Their skin shimmered with faint iridescence and their eyes were large, black, and unblinking. Velen, one of the Concord's founding species. "Ambassador Carter," the lead Velen said, voice a low hum that vibrated in Daniel's chest. "Welcome to Viridia Prime. We have long awaited your arrival." Daniel offered a small bow. "The honor is ours. Thank you for this opportunity." Lisa followed a step behind, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She just stood, hands at her sides, gaze sweeping the corridor, the ceiling, the shadows between the light panels. The Velen noticed. Their heads tilted slightly, almost in unison. The walk to the grand chamber was long and silent. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, reacting to their footsteps. Daniel kept his expression open, friendly. He knew the cameras were watching. Every species in the Concord would see this moment, the first human ambassador stepping onto neutral ground. He had to be perfect, calm, trustworthy. Lisa, meanwhile, saw 6 blind spots in the corridor, 3 possible ambush zones, and 2 maintenance hatches that hadn't been sealed properly. She noted the location of every emergency exit, every security drone hovering near the ceiling. She didn't care about optics. She cared about survival. The grand chamber was enormous, a dome of crystalline alloy open to the stars above. Hundreds of delegates sat in tiered rings, each representing a different world, a different voice in the galactic chorus. As Daniel entered, a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to him, some curious, some wary, some openly skeptical. He walked to the center platform alone. Lisa remained at the edge near the entrance, where she could see everything and be seen by no one. "I stand before you not as a conqueror," Daniel began, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, "but as a student. Humanity has much to learn from your wisdom, your unity, your history. We come in peace with open hands and open hearts." Polite applause rippled through the chamber. The Velen envoy nodded slowly. A few avian delegates tilted their heads in what might have been approval. But Lisa saw the way the reptilian quarren shifted in their seats, claws tapping against armrests. She saw the way the gelatinous Keth floated a little higher in their containment suits, As if bracing, humans were new, unknown, and in the galaxy, the unknown was often feared. After the speech, there was a reception in the Hall of Accord, a vast, airy space filled with floating tables and hovering servers carrying trays of food and drink. Most of it looked inedible to human eyes. Glowing fungi, steaming vapors, cubes of shimmering gel. Daniel accepted a cup of something warm and amber-colored, sipping it carefully. It tasted like cinnamon and static. He moved through the crowd, shaking hands or tentacles or claws, exchanging pleasantries, answering gentle questions about Earth's culture, its government, its intentions. He spoke of art, of music, of the dream of reaching the stars. He did not mention the wars, the bombs, the centuries of blood spilled over borders and beliefs. Lisa stayed near the wall, nursing a glass of water she hadn't touched. She watched the Veln whispering in corners, their eyes flicking toward the humans too often. She saw a Quarren delegate gesture sharply toward Daniel, then quickly look away. Something was off. Not hostile yet, but tense. Like the air before a storm. One Veln approached her, taller than the others with silver markings along his jawline. "Lieutenant Colonel Morgan," he said, voice lower than the others. "Your reputation precedes you." Lisa didn't flinch. "I don't have a reputation. I do a job." "You led the Mars Defense Initiative during the Titan skirmish," he said. "You lost 12 ships. You destroyed 43. You never asked for backup." "I had what I needed," she said. The Veln studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a slow, thin stretch of lips that didn't reach his eyes. "Humans are fascinating. You speak of peace, yet your military records read like poetry of war." "We protect what matters," Lisa said simply. The Veln nodded, then drifted back into the crowd. Lisa watched him go. She knew what he was thinking. They all were. They saw Daniel's smile and heard his gentle words, and they assumed humans were soft, kind, naive. They didn't see the teeth behind the smile. Later, back aboard the Odyssey, Daniel sat in his quarters, rubbing his temples. "Think we made a good impression?" Lisa stood by the door, arms crossed again. "They're watching us. Not because they like us, because they're trying to figure out if we're a threat. Then we'll show them we're not." Lisa looked out the viewport at the glittering station. "Hope that works," she said quietly. "Because if they decide we are a threat, they won't ask questions. They'll act," Daniel sighed. "Let's just get through tomorrow's trade talks without incident." Lisa didn't answer. She just turned and walked down the corridor, her boots silent on the deck. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere in the dark, the galaxy watched, waiting to see what the new species would do next. Part 2. 3 months after the reception on Viridia Prime, the human delegation had settled into a quiet routine. Daniel Carter spent his days in council meetings, trade negotiations, and cultural exchanges. Lisa Morgan rarely left the Odyssey, but when she did, it was always with purpose, inspecting joint patrol routes, reviewing security protocols, or running drills with the small team of human personnel stationed on the station. The Concord treated them with polite distance, like a guest who might break the furniture if left unsupervised. Then came the distress call from the Kestros belt. It crackled over the emergency channel during a routine supply transfer. A Concord freighter, the Dawn Chorusing, had been ambushed near the outer rim of the belt, a lawless stretch of asteroid fields and dead moons where pirates and rogue factions liked to hide. The attackers were identified as Jar, a splinter group of the insectoid hive species that had refused to join the Concord centuries ago. They were fast, brutal, and known for stripping ships clean, crew included. The Concord response was immediate but cautious. A fleet of 3 cruisers was dispatched under the command of a Quarren admiral named Vex. Their orders were clear: establish communication, assess intent, and if possible, negotiate a ceasefire. Violence was a last resort. The Concord prided itself on solving conflicts with words, not weapons. Lisa received the alert while reviewing patrol logs in the Odyssey's tactical bay. She read the message twice, then tapped her comm. "Carter, we're going to Kestros." "Lisa, the Concord's handling it," Daniel said, voice tight. "We're observers, not participants." "They're sending diplomats to a gunfight," she replied. "I'm not waiting for permission." Before Daniel could argue, she was already moving. She activated the human frigates docked at Viridia's military wing. 3 sleek, unmarked vessels named Haven, Rook, and Warden. Their crews scrambled to stations without question. They knew Lisa. They knew what silence meant. The frigates jumped to warp within minutes, leaving the conquered fleet still powering up their engines. By the time the Quarren cruisers arrived at the Kestro's coordinates, the battle was already over. The Dawn Chorus floated in pieces, its hull torn open like a gutted fish. Debris drifted in slow spirals, cargo pods, shattered consoles, frozen bodies, and torn uniforms. But there were no Tsar ships. No wreckage, no signs of a prolonged fight. Instead, the area was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Then the Quarren sensors picked up faint energy signatures, electromagnetic pulses fading fast. And something else. Human comms chatter, encrypted and clipped. Admiral Vex hailed the nearest human vessel. "Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, explain your presence." Lisa's voice came through calm and clear. "Threat neutralized. No survivors, what did you do?" Vex demanded. "We did our job." Back on Viridia Prime, the news spread like fire through dry grass. The Jar swarm, 12 ships, over 300 warriors, had been wiped out in under 12 minutes. No warning shots. No attempts at parley. Just a sudden, overwhelming strike that fried their neural networks with EMP bursts, then shredded their hulls with railgun fire. The humans hadn't even boarded. They hadn't taken prisoners. They'd erased the threat and left. The Concord Council convened an emergency session. Delegates shouted over one another, voices sharp with outrage and fear. The Quarren called it butchery. The Keth called it reckless. Even the Veln, usually unreadable, seemed unsettled. Daniel stood before them alone. Lisa had refused to come. She said she'd only make it worse, he told the council. But I'm here to speak for both of us. "You slaughtered them like animals," cried a Quarren envoy, her voice trembling with anger. "They could have been reasoned with." Daniel didn't raise his voice. "They opened fire on a civilian freighter. They killed 47 people before we even arrived. What was there to reason about?" "They are a young faction," another delegate argued. "Unstable, yes, but not beyond redemption." "Redemption doesn't bring back the dead," Daniel said quietly. The room fell silent. No one had expected a human to speak so plainly, so coldly. Later in the human quarters, Daniel found Lisa cleaning her folding knife at the small table. She didn't look up when he entered. "They want you to apologize," he said. She snapped the blade shut. "For what?" "Doing what they were too slow to do." "They think we're dangerous." She finally looked at him. "Good." Daniel sat across from her, rubbing his eyes. "Lisa, we're trying to build trust here. Not fear. Trust is earned when you show you can protect your own," she said. "Fear is what keeps enemies from testing you. Right now we need both," he wanted to argue. But he remembered the faces of the Dawn Chorus crew in the security footage, wide-eyed, screaming as Jar boarding pods breached their hull. He remembered the silence after the attack. The clean, brutal efficiency of the human response. Maybe fear wasn't the worst thing in the galaxy. The next day, Lisa submitted the full combat logs to the Conquered. Every sensor reading, every command, every second of the engagement. She included no commentary. Just facts. Cold, clear, undeniable. The logs showed something the Concord hadn't expected. The human frigates hadn't fired until the Jar ignored 3 hails and launched a second wave of boarding drones. The EMP strike had been precise, targeting only the Jar neural relays, disabling their swarm coordination without destroying their ships entirely. The railgun fire came only after the Jar attempted to flee, scattering in all directions. It was surgical, controlled, not rage, not bloodlust, strategy. Still, the damage was done. The galaxy now saw humans not as eager students, but as something else. Something that smiled during speeches but moved like shadows in a crisis. In the mess hall of Viridia Prime, a group of Veln diplomats watched Lisa walk by. She carried a tray, sat alone, ate without looking up. One of them whispered, "They call themselves diplomats." But their eyes never stop hunting, another nodded. Like wolves in suits, Lisa heard them. She always did. But she didn't react. She finished her meal, stood and left. Outside, the stars burned as they always had. Cold, distant, unmoved by outrage or apology. Back on the Odyssey, she reviewed the next patrol schedule. She noted a spike in Jar activity near the Helios Drift. She marked it for surveillance. She didn't report it to the Conquered. Not yet. Let them wonder what humans would do next. let them wonder if the next time the humans would wait for permission. The truth was simple. Humans didn't start fights. But when one came to them, they ended it. Fast, clean, final. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand that peace, to humans, wasn't the absence of war. It was the certainty that war would never be worth it for their enemies. Lisa holstered her knife and walked to the bridge. The stars outside were quiet, but she knew better than to trust silence. Part 3. Tension hung over Viridia Prime like a storm cloud that refused to break. After the Kestros incident, the Concord stopped inviting humans to strategy sessions. Trade talks slowed to a crawl. Human supply requests were under review. Even the mess hall servers seemed to take longer when it was Daniel's turn in line. The message was clear: you are not one of us. Daniel tried to stay calm. He kept attending council meetings, kept offering Earth's help on environmental projects, medical aid, even cultural exchanges. But his words landed in silence. The other delegates nodded politely, then turned away the moment he finished speaking. They were afraid, and fear made them cold. Lisa didn't care. She spent her days running drills with her team, 8 men and women who looked like engineers, medics, or linguists, but moved like soldiers. They practiced emergency evacuations, comms blackouts, close quarters defense. None of them wore uniforms with insignia. None carried visible weapons, but each knew how to disable a security drone with a pen, how to hotwire a shuttle, how to disappear in a crowd. One evening, a Concord surveillance drone, small, silent, shaped like a silver beetle, drifted too close to the human residential sector on Viridia. It hovered near ventilation shafts, scanning windows, recording voices. The humans noticed right away. They always did. 3 hours later, the drone vanished from Concord tracking. Its last signal showed it entering Earth's outer defense perimeter near the colony of New Haven. Then, nothing. Static. Gone. The Concord accused Earth of destroying a peaceful observation unit. It was unarmed, said a Keth delegate, their gelatinous form quivering with indignation. It posed no threat. Daniel stood before the council again, this time with a data pad in hand. You say it was unarmed, he said. But we have proof it wasn't just observing. He played a recording. Grainy but clear. The drone days earlier. Slipping into a human diplomatic suite on the moon colony of Selene. It hovered near the wall panel behind Daniel's desk, extending a thin filament into the wiring. Another clip showed the same drone inside a medical bay on Mars Station, scanning encrypted patient logs. A third showed it near Lisa's private quarters on Viridia, attempting to access her secure terminal. The room fell silent. You planted spies in our homes, Daniel said, voice low but steady. You wanted to see what we were hiding. So let me be clear. We notice everything. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The message landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading in every direction. That night, Lisa met her team in a quiet corner of the Odyssey's cargo bay. No lights except a single work lamp. No comms active, just 8 people standing in a loose circle. Faces calm, eyes sharp. They think we're bluffing, Lisa said. They think Kestros was a one-time thing, that will back down if they push hard enough. She looked at each of them. They're wrong, no one spoke. They didn't need to. They all knew what came next. Not war, not yet, but pressure. The kind that made enemies rethink their choices. Over the next few weeks, strange things began happening across the Concord's outer territories. A Quarren research outpost near the Perseus Rim reported a total comms blackout for 48 hours. When systems came back online, all their data on human biology had been wiped. A Veln supply depot found its navigation beacons broadcasting false coordinates, just enough to delay shipments by days. A Keth agricultural station discovered their food synthesizers had been recalibrated to produce meals laced with harmless but deeply unpleasant-tasting compounds. No attacks. No violence, just inconvenience, precision, control. And every incident happened right after a Concord vote to restrict human access to hyperspace, lanes, or delay Earth's full membership. The Concord scrambled to find the cause. They ran diagnostics, replaced hardware, even brought in outside auditors, but they found nothing. No malware, no sabotage, just perfectly timed system failures that always resolved themselves. leaving behind only frustration and suspicion. Then a Velen analyst, digging through maintenance logs, noticed a pattern. Every affected station had recently hosted a team of human goodwill technicians, civilian volunteers offering free upgrades to outdated systems. Friendly faces, helpful hands, clean uniforms with Earth's blue and white patch. The humans hadn't broken in. They'd been invited. Back on Viridia, the council erupted. Some demanded immediate expulsion of all human personnel. Others argued for tighter surveillance. But a few, the older ones, the ones who'd lived through real wars, grew quiet. They remembered stories from their own pasts, species that smiled while sharpening knives, that offered gifts while mapping your weaknesses. Lisa didn't deny anything. She didn't confirm anything either. When questioned, she simply said, "We maintain what we're asked to maintain. If your systems are fragile, maybe don't let just anyone touch them." Daniel, meanwhile, kept showing up to meetings. He brought gifts, earth-grown apples, hand-woven scarves, recordings of ocean waves. He spoke of cooperation, of shared futures. He acted like nothing had changed, but the Concord saw the truth now. The human delegation wasn't just diplomats. They were a unit. Every member trained, aware, ready. The smile was real, but so was the steel behind it. One evening, a young Quarren aide approached Daniel in the corridor. "Why do you keep trying?" she asked. "We're scared of you." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Because fear can turn to respect," he said, "and respect can turn to trust, but only if we don't give up." She nodded slowly, then walked away. Later, Lisa stood on the observation deck watching a Concord patrol ship drift past. She knew they were watching her too. Let them wonder how many of her people were already inside their systems. Their stations, their blind spots. She thought about Earth, green hills, crowded cities, children playing in parks that had once been battlefields. Humans had spent centuries learning how to hide their claws, not because they were weak, but because they'd learned that the smartest predator doesn't roar until it's already won. The galaxy was starting to understand, slowly, painfully. But they were learning, and Lisa would make sure they never forgot. Part 4. The Concord stopped speaking to humans directly. Messages came through intermediaries, cold, formal notes delivered by silent drones. Trade permits were denied without explanation. Human ships were rerouted to longer, less efficient hyperspace lanes. Rumors spread through the station corridors. Humans couldn't be trusted. They were too aggressive, too secretive, too unlike the rest of the galaxy. Some species began calling Earth the Silent Fang. Daniel kept showing up to council sessions anyway. He sat in the back, said nothing, just listened. He took notes. He smiled when greeted, even if the greeting was stiff. He never argued, never demanded. He simply existed, a quiet reminder that humans weren't going anywhere. Lisa, meanwhile, vanished from public view. She didn't attend meetings. She didn't walk the halls. She stayed aboard the Odyssey, or in the human sector, or in places the Concord's cameras couldn't see. Her team did the same. They moved like ghosts, here one moment, gone the next. No one saw them working. But things kept happening. Outposts along the Perseus Rim reported strange glitches. A Velen mining station's gravity stabilizers failed for exactly 17 minutes, long enough to spill a week's worth of refined ore into space, short enough to avoid casualties. A Quarren science vessel found its long-range sensors recalibrated to ignore signals from human frequencies, making it blind to Earth ships for 3 full rotations. A Keth diplomatic shuttle suffered a minor oxygen leak that forced an emergency landing, right after its crew voted to label humans a potential security risk. Each incident looked like an accident. Each resolved itself before serious harm could be done. But the pattern was undeniable. Every time the Concord moved against Earth, something went wrong for them. Not violently, not cruelly, just inconveniently, precisely. The Velen were the first to connect the dots. Their intelligence branch reviewed every maintenance log, every visitor roster, every repair request from the past 6 months. They found human technicians listed on all affected stations, always polite, always efficient, always gone before anything strange occurred. The humans hadn't hacked systems. They'd been given access, and they'd used it not to destroy but to remind. Remind the galaxy that humans didn't need to fire a shot to win. Back on Viridia, fear turned to unease, then to something deeper, respect laced with dread. Delegates stopped whispering in hallways. They watched their words. They double-checked their own systems. Some even began installing human-made firewalls, not because they trusted Earth, but because they knew human tech worked. Lisa didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply updated her logs, rotated her teams, and prepared for the next move. She knew the Concord wouldn't stay passive forever. Sooner or later they would choose. Accept humans as equals, or try to remove them. She hoped they chose wisely. One night, a message arrived on Daniel's private channel. Encrypted, untraceable. It read, "They're planning a vote. Full expulsion. 3 days." Daniel didn't show it to anyone, not even Lisa. He just sat in his quarters staring at the stars, thinking, expulsion wouldn't just isolate Earth, it would mark them as enemies. And once that line was crossed, there would be no going back. He made a decision. The next morning, he requested an emergency session with the Concord Council. Not as a delegate, not as a petitioner, as a representative of Earth. The request was denied twice. The third time, he walked into the chamber anyway. Guards moved to stop him, but he raised his hands, empty and open. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to offer something." The Velen elder, the same one who'd spoken to Lisa months ago, finally nodded. "Let him speak." Daniel stepped to the center. He didn't plead. He didn't argue. He placed a small data crystal on the council table. "This contains the full schematics for a new fusion reactor design. Clean, stable, 10 times more efficient than your current models. It can power a city the size of Viridia for a century on a single fuel rod." Silence. "You're giving this to us?" asked a Quarren delegate, voice tight with suspicion. "No conditions," Daniel said. "No strings. It's yours." "Why?" the Velen elder asked. "Because we don't want enemies," Daniel replied. "We want neighbors who understand the difference between a handshake and a throat hold." He left the chamber without waiting for a response. Behind him, the delegates stared at the crystal like it might bite them. That evening, Lisa found him on the observation deck. "You gave them the Helios core," she said. "It was Earth's most advanced energy breakthrough in decades. They needed to see we're not just teeth," he said. "We're hands, too." Lisa leaned against the railing, watching a fleet of Concord ships return from patrol. "They'll still fear us, maybe," Daniel said. "But now they'll also know we choose peace, even when we don't have to." Over the next 2 days, nothing happened. No announcements, no votes. The station hummed with its usual rhythm, but beneath it tension coiled like a spring. Then, on the third day, the Velen elder summoned Daniel and Lisa to a private chamber deep in the station's core. No guards, no recorders, just 3 chairs and a single window looking out at the gas giant below. "We've reviewed your gift," the elder said. "It works. Better than we imagined," Daniel nodded. "The council is divided," the elder continued. "Some say you're manipulating us with kindness. Others say you've proven your worth. But all agree on one thing. You are not what we thought." Lisa said nothing. She just waited. "You are not diplomats pretending to be warriors," the elder said, eyes locking onto hers. "You are warriors who have chosen to speak first. That is rare," he paused. "The expulsion vote has been canceled." Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "But know this," the elder added, voice dropping low. "If you ever use your strength against us without cause, the galaxy will unite against you. Not out of fear, out of necessity. We know," Lisa said finally. "And if you ever test us again, you'll learn why we don't make threats." The elder studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. As they left the chamber, Daniel glanced at Lisa. "What now?" "Now," she said, "we keep watching. Keep ready, and hope they remember today." Outside, the stars burned as they always had, cold, ancient, indifferent. But somewhere in that endless dark, the balance had shifted. Not with fire, not with blood, but with silence, precision, and the quiet certainty that the most dangerous predator is the one that lets you believe you're safe. Part 5. The vote never came. Not the one the Concord had planned. Not the one that would have cast Earth out into the cold dark as an enemy. Instead, something quieter happened, something slower but deeper. The galaxy began to change its mind. It started with small things. A Velen freighter accepted a human escort through a pirate-heavy sector. A Quarren research team asked Earth scientists for help calibrating deep space sensors. A Keth delegation visited the Odyssey, not to inspect but to learn. Humans were still watched, still studied, but now with something closer to caution than contempt. They had shown teeth, yes, but they had also offered bread. And the galaxy was beginning to understand that both came from the same hand. Daniel kept his office on Viridia Prime, but now the corridor outside was no longer empty. Delegates stopped by not to argue but to talk. They asked about Earth's oceans, its music, its history of rebuilding after war. Daniel answered honestly. He spoke of mistakes as much as victories. He never pretended humans were perfect. He only insisted they were trying. Lisa stayed in the background, as always. She rarely attended meetings, but her presence was felt. When a minor skirmish flared near the Helios Drift, a border dispute between two non-conquered species, the human frigates moved before anyone asked. They didn't fire. They simply positioned themselves between the warring ships, broadcasting a single message on all channels: stand down or be removed. Both sides backed off within minutes. No shots fired. No lives lost, just the quiet weight of human resolve. Afterward, a young Quarren officer approached Lisa in the station's lower docking bay. "Why did you go?" he asked. "It wasn't your fight." Lisa looked at him, her eyes calm. "Peace isn't someone else's job." He nodded slowly, then walked away. She knew he'd remember that. Months passed. Earth's fusion reactor design spread through the conquered, powering hospitals, schools, even farms on struggling colony worlds. Human engineers worked alongside Veln architects to reinforce aging station hulls. Human medics trained Keth healers in trauma response. The fear didn't vanish, it never would, but it began to mix with something else. Trust, earned not by promises but by action. Then came the day the conquered called a full assembly, not for debate, but for recognition. Daniel entered the grand chamber alone. Lisa waited outside near the entrance as she always did. The chamber was full. Every species represented, every voice present. The air hummed with a tension that felt different this time, not hostile but expectant. The Veln elder stood at the center platform. "For 83 years, he began, humanity has walked among the stars as children. But children grow, and sometimes they teach their elders," he turned to Daniel. "The Concord formally acknowledges Earth not as a guest, but as a peer. Your seat on the council is no longer provisional. It is permanent." A murmur ran through the chamber, not of protest but of acceptance. Daniel bowed his head. "Thank you. We will honor that trust." After the ceremony, delegates gathered in the Hall of Accord once more. But this time, when Daniel moved through the crowd, hands reached out to him. Not claws, not tentacles held back in caution, but open gestures of respect. Even the Quarren envoy who had once called humans butchers now offered a small stiff nod. Lisa watched from the edge of the room. She didn't join the celebration. She didn't need to. She saw what mattered. The way the Veln no longer whispered when she passed. The way security drones gave her a wider berth. Not out of suspicion, but out of awareness. They knew now. They all knew. Later, aboard the Odyssey, Daniel found her on the observation deck. The station lights glittered below like fallen stars. "We did it," he said softly. Lisa didn't smile. She never did on duty. But her shoulders were less tense. "We didn't do anything they didn't force us to." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But we chose how to respond. That's what matters." She looked out at the endless dark. "They think it's over, that we've been tamed." "They're wrong," Daniel said. Lisa finally turned to him. "Good." Silence settled between them, comfortable and deep. Outside, a human freighter drifted past, its hull marked with Earth's blue and white insignia. It moved without escort, without fear, because now the galaxy knew. To threaten a human ship was to invite consequences far beyond what any young species should be capable of, and yet, humans never struck first. Never gloated. Never demanded tribute. They simply existed, calm, capable, and utterly unshakable. Back on Earth, children played in parks that had once been battlefields. Farmers grew food in soil that had known blood. Artists painted skies that had once burned with fire. Humanity had not forgotten what it was. It had just learned when to show it. As the Odyssey prepared for its next patrol, Lisa walked the corridors one last time before departure. She passed a young human technician, a kid barely out of training, adjusting a comms panel. He saw her and straightened up. Ma'am, he said. She nodded. Keep your eyes open, son. Yes, ma'am. She kept walking. No one saluted. No one shouted orders. But everyone moved with quiet purpose. They knew who they were. And now the galaxy did too. The conquered would never fully understand humans. No species ever truly understands another. But they had learned the most important lesson. Humans were not diplomats pretending to be predators. They were apex predators who had chosen every single day to offer peace first. And that choice, made not from weakness, but from strength, was the most terrifying thing of all. The stars outside burned cold and distant. But somewhere among them, Earth's light now held its place, not by force, but by will. And that was enough.